Welcome to another episode of Homebrew Wednesday with Mike. Today, we're going to be talking about a few things. I'm going to taste a barley wine that I made quite a long time ago. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about priming sugar and then a little bit about cask beers. The reason that all this gets kind of grouped together is because with this particular barley wine, I very much so undercarbonated it. Some might say almost nothing at all, making it resemble a cask ale of some kinds. The hop presence is still very, very much there. The sweetness is there to the max. But it still maintains as a very interesting and unique style of beer, which is the barley wine. So we're going to open this. This is probably about, I don't know, must be getting close to 2 years old now. So I'm actually I want to drink this fairly soon. Finish all the bottles that I have, quite a lot. Probably anywhere from 18 to 24, like tall boys like this. So I got to get on drinking those because this one clocks in at around 13%. So it's quite a lot in terms of alcohol. But again, because of the low carbon, because of the practically nothing carbonation, I want to drink these sooner rather than later before they spoil. But because it is a barley wine, because there's so much hop, and because hop itself acts like a preservative, it could actually maintain itself for, I think, some time to come. Very dark in color. Up to the light, it's actually red. Looking through the glass, it's aged for a long time, so it's very, very clear. There are traces of a slight carbonation, but again, that might be because I poured it quite aggressively. And the nose, it's really, you get those spicy hop notes. I know for a fact that I definitely use Nugget in this as a bittering hop, and I think as a flavoring hop, so it's no surprise that I get that aggressively to go on. I used a lot. It's a barley wine, so I probably used about 8 ounces of hops. I know I use primarily English and not American. So we're talking Willamette, Nugget. I think those were the only two that I actually used. But yeah, very spicy on the nose. Very alcoholic too. The alcohol definitely, some might call it, stings your nostrils. There's no doubt about that. It really does have like you can see that there's bubbles, that it is carbonated, but I know from experience that tasting this, it's really not. And that's a problem of two things. And it was a problem of the fact that I killed my yeast and that I didn't have enough priming sugar when I bottled it. And there's different amounts of priming sugar, maybe even different kinds, depending on who you are, that you would want to use for each style of beer. And I've talked about it before, but I have my ratios and I stick to those. There's still a lot of caramel coming off the nose. Like a light brown sugar, but very strong caramel flavors. Maybe even a little bit of toffee, some toasted caramelized notes. Not quite maple syrup caramelly, but definitely like more of a toffee. And very sweet, very, very sweet in the smell. Let's go in for a taste. I can say, because this has only been chilled in the fridge for just a little bit, that I notice now a small tinge of sour in the beer. And I'm wondering if that has to do with what I just talked about, the aging, and the fact that it is already 2 years old, and the fact that it has hardly any combination. I'm wondering if it's starting to make that transition into bad alcohol. I'm hoping not, but like I said, I'm going to drink these soonish anyways, so I'm not really worried about that. But very lasting bitterness on the tongue, just very bitter, more of an earthy bitterness. Probably attribute a little bit of that to the Willamette. But the spices die on the back of the tongue. The first thing I got at the tip of the mouth, very dry finish as well. It's very sweet mouthfeel, but a very dry finish. I wouldn't say clean because it has a very assertive bitterness, leaving at the back of the tongue, leaving overall feeling in your mouth. But at first, you get much more of a zesty, almost lemony, maybe that acidic, maybe that where a little bit of a sour tinge comes in, followed by a very sweet and what I think was floral mouthfeel, which will go for it again. Yeah, definitely more of a floral sweetness. Now that I'm tasting it and my nose is getting back into it, another one of those sweet characters, like I was saying, not just toffee, but like there's a little bit of honey notes in here. And I can't remember if I actually put honey in this beer, but it's quite possible, because I get a lot of that. I get a lot of like nectary fruitness, like fruity fruitness, a little more of the dark caramelized fruits, but still a nectar type feeling. Overall, it's a very nice beer. It's just too bad it's not carbonated. I would have loved to enter this into some competitions. A very good barley wine, strong. You definitely feel it. Although you feel it like once you're done drinking, you know that you've consumed something strong. It's there in the nose. It's much less there in the mouthfeel because of how sweet it is, but it's definitely present. So what happened with this is that this was one of my early beers. I said 2 years ago, so this is one of my much more early projects. And what actually happened is the reason I actually killed yeast before pitching the sugar, one of the reasons it hardly, if anything, carbonated, is because I added the yeast right to some hot sugary liquid, which was my priming sugar. I had my mix of sugar and boiling water to dissolve it. I added that to my carboy, which I would then siphon off my secondary beer into, except usually when I hold my siphon into the secondary beer, the primary beer, whatever is going to go to the priming sugar, I hold it above the yeast when I start to pump. That way, the clear wort, which doesn't carry, the yeast that I consider to be the priming yeast, into the final vessel, and then once a certain level of liquid has accumulated in the priming bucket carboy, then I'll let my siphon fall to the bottom. Unless I'm kegging, then I won't let it fall because I want crystal clear beer. But if I'm bottling, I'll let it fall to gather up some of that fresher yeast on the bottom. I try to keep it to the side to avoid the lower trub, and that makes its way in, and then it's fine. But what happened here is I dropped it right away, and all yeast that would have carbonated the beer, or most of it, except for what was in suspension, died instantly because it was still boiling hot priming liquid. This is the only time that I ever did that. Only time I had a problem with non-carbonation. I've talked about exploding bottles, so I've been on the other side, but this is the only case where it died. The other option is the alcohol killed it, but I am pretty sure that it's the hot priming sugar, because I've made high alcohol beers before and they've survived and they've been spectacular. But this one didn't make the cut. Although in terms of taste and everything else it did, it would have done nothing in a competition because it's not carbonated. And that brings me to talk about cask beers, because this reminds me of a cask beer, because I love cask beer. I find that I'm the type that likes to low carbonate my beer. It's one of the reasons I got into kegging, is because I found the bottle carbonated beers for a home brewer were too high. It was maybe premature, I didn't have enough experience, but the kegging allowed me to really expand my beer production, allowed me to test a bunch of different carbonation limits, and I love being right below the norm, because right below the norm makes for a beer a lot easy drinking. If it's high alcohol, you got to be careful with that, but for a normal 6% beer, I find that like just below what you would be like a really fizzy beer, just enough to have that nice like crisp feeling going down the throat. Enjoy all the flavors, still 100% beer carbonated level, just kind of like you would expect a stout to be, a stout level carbonation in a lot of my styles. Except obviously there are exceptions when I'm doing Belgians and things that require a nice dense head and a heavy carbonation. I try to respect that with the style. But overall, I like less carbonated beers, which is why I love cask beers. Cask beers that aren't ridiculous things. Like, I mean, barley wines and imperial stouts on cask are delicious because they have extreme amount of flavor. I mean, the best imperial stouts I ever had was a espresso imperial stout on cask. That was delicious. They would only serve it in half pints and it was at Benelux in Montreal. It was one of the most delicious imperial stouts that I've ever had. And I mean, just got so much flavor, and you can appreciate it all because there's nothing. The carbonation isn't. It's not that it's not hiding anything, but you just appreciate all the flavors in this still-ish liquid. And I can really respect that. I mean, I'd love to get a cask up in here, but I mean, that requires, you know, getting the pump, which requires getting pretty much a stable surface to attach it to, so that, you know, you don't attach it to your shitty table, then you start pumping and everything just rips off, falls to the ground and breaks. That would suck a lot. But it's coming. I will definitely cask it in the future. Hopefully, you know, when I have a place of my own. But yeah, I love cask beers. Very like respectful for big beers. Even less flavored beers, I find that you get a lot of hidden character. I mean, one thing's for sure, IPAs on cask I actually find a little less pleasant because I find that when it's too hoppy a beer, and yes, I use the word hoppy, when a beer has too many hops, I find it to be very unpleasant without a backing of carbonation. That's me personally, but I find that a lot of the less, well, what I consider less pleasant hop characters, like whether it's earthiness or really dank herbalness, even the spicy piney things that I find not less tolerable, but less overall enjoyable. You get less enjoyment from it. I find that these require some level of carbonation backing to be really effective as like a really great IPA. So I don't know, I would pick and choose cask ales. I wouldn't like just, you know, make all my beers on cask. Stouts are great on cask. English ales, English bitter, that's one, like if it's just a bitterness and a hop, that's great. Really nice. I love English bitter as a cask, that's great. So like I said, some of the more floral, citrusy IPAs, that's great as well. Any Belgian ales are touchy. I mean, I guess I don't know. Belgian ales are touchy. I don't know if I'd want that on cask. Any fruit beers, it would be interesting. Again, maybe less pleasant, but any porters, stouts. I feel like a lot of English beers would just be better on cask in general. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's where cask came from originally, so it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, overall great. Be careful with your priming sugar because it could allow you, well, you know, maybe you don't want to be careful. Maybe you want to enjoy some cask beer like I am here. Cheers. And of course, happy Homebrew Wednesday. It's very rare that I cheers you guys, so seriously, cheers. I made an IPA on the weekend, and it's my first time using Pacific Ale yeast from White Labs. I wanted something that would be close to an American ale strain, but a little more fruity and give a little more flavor. It's fluctuating like crazy. I saw that, I read about it. It was a high fluctuating yeast. I can back that 100%. It's looking good though. I have it next to US-05. I'm doing a little comparison. I want to see how different they are at their most optimum temperature range. Keeping them between 68, 71, around there. More in the 69-ish area. Oh yeah. So yeah, that's what I got to say for you guys this week. A little nice chit chat. I hope you enjoyed that. Still waiting on emails, ideas. And yes, I know I'm that guy who's promising to do a brew video and not getting it out there, but that will change. I just have to make the setup work for that brew day. A lot of my brew days have been rushed lately because of plans around it. And I'm not exactly sure what's going to be happening in the next few weeks, few months, the next bit of the year. There might be some things coming up that are going to make it even harder. But we'll see. I'm in the middle of tax season, as you guys know. I'm an accountant, so I'm working my ass off doing that this month. So that's why I'm doing the videos a little bit, I don't know if it's actually shorter, but keeping them concise, keeping them, you know, with some more current, random little topics. I'll try to get back to you next week with something a little more interesting. I'll think from now to then about a cool topic, and we'll check in then. So again, this is Mike, Beer Addicted. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, tell your friends. I love you guys. Thanks for all the support. Cheers.